Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us with you today. My name is Reyhana, and I have with me my colleague Catriona. We're both from Islamic Relief Canada, and we're here with you today, and we're going to be presenting an overview about our work in Afghanistan and what we're currently doing in the country. So we'll start with some quick introductions. So I've said this before, but I'm Reyhana Patel. I'm the head of communications and government relations. I've been with Islamic Relief Canada since 2016, so about 5.5 years. And then before that, I was actually at Islamic Relief Worldwide in the UK. So I've been at Islamic Relief for a while. And I oversee the communications and government relations portfolios here at Islamic Relief. So that includes anything from media relations, government relations, policy research, advocacy, and crisis communications. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Catriona for her introduction.
Hi, everyone. I'm the International Program Manager, and I've been with IR Canada now for just under 5 years. I oversee a wonderful team that works with our field offices all around the globe to implement the many projects that you might have seen on our websites or social media. So that's a quick introduction to myself. We'll go ahead and get started into on the program updates, starting with an overview of the context even prior to recent events. So at the beginning of 2021, around 93% of the population was living on less than $2 a day, and it was estimated that around half of the population in Afghanistan required humanitarian support. So this was approximately 18.4 million people, and this is 6 times the number of people in need at the start of 2018. So needs have been compounding over the past few years due to recurring natural disasters such as drought, as well as more recently the pandemic. Some of the examples of the results of this have been increased food insecurity, in part due to the loss of livelihoods and challenges in accessing basic services such as healthcare. Quickly moving into sort of IR in Afghanistan. We have had extensive programming, both humanitarian and development, since we established our office in Afghanistan in 1999. And these are over many different sectors, such as health, food security, and water sanitation and hygiene, to name a few. We've also had a lot of different partnerships. Some examples include with the UN, so like the World Food Program and UN OCHA. So for World Food Program partnerships, they've included health and nutrition programming specifically geared towards pregnant and lactating women, or food support for girls at school as well. For UN OCHA, those types of programs that we've done in partnership have been primarily in the sectors of protection. So IR Canada's specific projects have also been across all sectors. Again, we work, in shelter and non-food items, water, sanitation, hygiene, protection, education, and livelihood. And this specific photo is from one of our emergency response projects a few years ago. So that's sort of a general overview of what our time in Afghanistan has included in terms of our programming. In terms of recent updates, as everybody knows, there has been sort of an escalation in some of the conflict. And in terms of what that means for the humanitarian needs, in Kabul, electricity and water supplies are intermittent, and internet is weak, for example. The cost of food and fuel has increased exponentially, and people are struggling to support their families. Some of you might have heard on the news, many people had tried to move into Kabul, and so there are a lot of internally displaced people in need of humanitarian assistance, and there's similar situations in other major cities as well. And overall, more than 500,000 people have been displaced in 2021 alone because of ongoing conflict or fighting. So this photo was recently taken actually in Kabul, and is an example of some of the conditions that internally displaced people or IDPs are living in. At the provincial level, NGO commissions have been set up. They've requested NGOs to start activities again, and we've submitted our project registration in several provinces. We continue to collaborate with the UN and other organizations as well. We want to ensure that there's a coordinated response and that humanitarian principles are upheld, and the safety of our rights holders, including staff, are part of that as well. So, as you can imagine, there are a lot of different challenges. Most recently, some of the ones that you might have heard about are banking issues or supplier availability to get started on, distributions and different program pieces that require some of those procurement elements as well. So I'll hand it back to Reyhana for advocacy and communications.
Perfect, thanks, Kat. And we'll just jump right into the next slide, if that's okay. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about women and girls. Before we go into Afghanistan, I just wanted to give you an overview about our work on women and girls. So we've done Islamic Relief as a whole, we've done a considerable amount specifically on violence against women and girls over the last number of years. As one of the largest Muslim NGOs in the world, it's one of the largest. We do feel like we have a responsibility to work with communities to kind of demyth issues when it comes specifically to Islam and violence against women and girls. So a lot of the communities that we work in, issues like domestic violence, early forced marriages, female genital mutilation are prevalent. And sometimes, Islam is used as a justification for some of these practices. So what we wanted to do and what we've been doing is countering these religious justifications through, trainings, workshops, education. If you're really interested in this work, I would recommend you going on to our website. We have something called the Violence Against Women and Girls Manual, which actually breaks down like all of these issues. And you can actually like go through the theological interpretations and see the counter ones and so forth. So I'd recommend you doing that. It's on our website under the policy research section. So when it comes to women and girls in Afghanistan, specifically, obviously in the last few weeks, there's been a lot of concerns about what the treatment of women and girls would look like under a Taliban leadership. So we have heard that the Taliban has said that they will respect women's rights within the limits of Islam. Obviously, what that looks like we're not sure yet. And obviously, we're hearing a lot of stuff that's coming out of Afghanistan. But what I can say, though, as a Muslim woman, denying girls education, violence against women and girls is completely unacceptable in Islam. The Islamic framework is pretty clear on that and its treatment for women and girls. So I do hope, and I think everyone hopes that when we say the limits of Islam, that is actually the Islamic framework is pretty clear on that. So for, I guess, a lot of our staff on the ground in Afghanistan are local Afghans, and, some of them are women. Right now, it's just a waiting game just to see, what measures are like. And as you know, with kind of programming, sometimes it's essential that women are delivering services. So we do hope that we can continue that work. Some of the key priority areas would be kind of right now in Afghanistan or protection of women and girls. My colleague just mentioned that, a lot of people are living in kind of open camps. Some of them are women and girls, and it leaves them very, very, very vulnerable. There's no like running water or electricity. And so that's an issue. And then obviously we have the violence against women and girls. So kind of, all that stuff I just mentioned, but also kind of what that looks like as well. And then the food insecurity, Kat mentioned this earlier as well. That's been a huge issue prior to all of this, and will continue to be a key humanitarian issue. And I can only see it I can only foresee it escalating, as the days go ahead. So do you want to go to the next slide? Sure. So I'm going to kind of move into advocacy a little bit. So, as an NGO, we're very, very limited to what we can advocate on due to safety and protection issues on the ground. As an NGO, like we do want to be able to provide programs and support services on the ground. And so we have to be really careful what we say publicly, because anything that we say will endanger staff on the ground. This doesn't necessarily apply just to Afghanistan. It applies to kind of a lot of the countries that we work in as well. So, we advocate purely on humanitarian grounds. Sometimes, we will pick out 2 or 3 issues in certain countries, but it all honestly just depends on the political context on the ground. Okay, so what can you do to help? So there are probably 2 things right now. I know there's a lot of things that everyone wants to do. Everyone wants to help. So the first thing is there's a lot of Canadian NGOs, and there are local organizations on the ground right now in Afghanistan. If you really want to help, what's happening on the ground, the humanitarian situation, you go onto their website, see what everyone's doing. Islamic Relief is also on the ground. We do have an emergency appeal, so you can go on, do your research, and donate. The other thing you can help with is around refugee resettlement in Canada. So we've all seen that the Canadian government has been evacuating Afghan refugees and bringing them here. And there's a lot of organizations that have, they've put out call for clothing, for food, for donations. So I think there's a few websites. We can share some resources with you after if you want, with some organizations who are kind of working directly with the Afghan refugees who are here. And then the third thing is political advocacy. So this is something that, as an NGO, we can't do, but this is something that you can do on a personal level. You can write to your, well, we're in an election right now, so I can't really say elected officials, but you can write to the candidates in your area, in your area, and see what their priorities are and what they would do if they get elected on Afghanistan, and how they would help refugees that are coming into the country, but also kind of evacuating those that need to get out of Afghanistan, and also the commitment to humanitarian funding on the ground as well. And I think that's pretty much it on our end. If you need more information, feel free to go on our website. There's a range of resources there. We do work in also 30 countries around the world, so you can have a look and see what else we do. But thank you so much for listening, and feel free to get in touch if you have any other questions.